Every club. Every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello, and welcome to Beyond the Pitch, a daily women's football podcast brought to you by the Global Sports Podcast Network. I'm Catherine, and today I'm solo again. Woohoo! I'm all by myself. No, that is really not how the song goes. I'm really tired. Anyway, it's very nice to see you all. You're out there in the ethos listening to this. I haven't been on my own for quite a while, so it's nice to see you all. So, what we're going to talk about today, as you all know, or you will do if you've listened to this podcast before, hint, hint, I like to go travelling virtually by watching football from different leagues. I quite often watch leagues from games from France. I really like the Eredivisie in the Netherlands. I try to catch the Saudi Pro League whenever I can, or the Saudi Premier League. So today I thought I would share a few of the differences that I've noticed of these other leagues compared to the WSL. So where I think the WSL can learn from other leagues and what I think we're already doing quite well. So the first topic is quality of facilities. Watching some of the FA Cup games this weekend actually reminded me of the variation in pitch quality we have, especially when you go beneath the WSL, like to the Championship and the National League and so forth. I think you don't have to get very far before the facilities begin to get like very muddy pitches and like in the Wolves versus United game, which was a cracking game, and huge plaudits to Wolves for kind of the atmosphere they created and everything. But the goal was so kind of like flappy in the wind, which I thought was quite funny. And even, I'm really sorry, Arsenal fans. I know there are a lot of you and you're very, very vocal, but I hate Meadow Park. So I went to watch Arsenal v Bayern, and it was raining, and you had to like walk through a field to get there, or across like a park or something, and it was really, really muddy, and I slipped and I got mud everywhere. And yeah, I just wasn't a fan of Meadow Park. I'm really sorry, Arsenal fans. However, I think this is actually, compared to other leagues, we actually have it pretty good in the WSL in particular. Less so, I think, when you get further down, as I said, into the Championship and so forth. For example, in Scotland, you've got some teams playing in stadiums with capacities of like 100, 200, 300, really, really small. And in the Netherlands as well, you have quite a lot of variation. I've watched quite a few games where it kind of looks like they're playing at a school. There's a couple of places that I really like that are kind of academy facilities that the women's teams play in, but they're actually really nice. One is PSG. If you've ever watched their games, PSG's campus looks really, really, really nice. I used really 3 times there, so that tells you how nice it is. It looks very modern, and even the gym and everything looks so modern. It looks great. Also, Bayern's campus looks really, really nice. I love how close the fans are to the pitch, and yeah, that's top of my list. I really want to go to Munich to Bayern campus. I was going to go to the Wolfsburg game in mid-March, but something came up with work. Pesky work. Anyway, so yeah, the WSL grounds I do think are better than a lot of leagues. In the Netherlands, yeah, you can really see it sometimes they do look like school pitches. I will say my favourite Dutch team, the Storks. I need to, because I actually talked to a few people in fans of the Storks now. I need to remember to call them ADO and not the Storks. They're in the Hague anyway. And I really need to remember to call them by their name and not just the Storks. But I just love that Stork. I mean, that's such a great mascot. Anyway, they are one of the only teams, I think they are the only team in the Netherlands who actually play all of their home games at the main stadium. And you can really see the difference. It's a really nice stadium. The pitch quality looks fantastic. Really comfortable seats, I will say. They look like they're, gaming computer chairs, really soft padded. They look really nice. And but then you watch some of the other teams, and you've got like maybe a small hut with with some seating around it, and people mainly standing around the barricades. And I think that does have its own feeling, and it has its own kind of quality to it. But if we're talking about professionalizing the women's game, I think you do have to sacrifice that. So the second thing I wanted to touch on, comparison point, is investment. Now, I do think we, again, have it pretty good in the WSL. It's been, quote unquote, fully professional since 2018. However, I have a huge issue with calling the WSL or any other league fully professional for one main reason. So, to me, this is just my opinion. I think that to call the WSL a fully professional league is wrong, because the players can't act as fully professional athletes because their careers are right. Their careers are short. So a football player, female or male, retires generally between 35 and 40, right? They don't earn, in the female game, in the women's game, in the WSL, they don't earn enough that they can then live comfortably after they retire, or live just generally, not even comfortably, after they retire on their earnings from their career. They need to have something else. They need to have a plan for what they're going to do when they stop playing football. And in the men's game, I think that players know that even if they if they don't want to work after they finish their career, they can just live very comfortably off their earnings from their career. And I think where that has an impact is in the women's game, the women playing and being paid a decent salary, but not anything compared to the men's game. They have to have a backup plan, and therefore they have to be actively doing something to prepare for the future. Like in the Netherlands, I know that a lot of the professional players are actually at uni or working. Like from the Storks, Barbara, who's their kind of veteran goalkeeper, she's been their goalkeeper for like 15 years. She also works as a swimming teacher or swimming coach. And so they can't dedicate their time 100% to the football, which of course is going to have an impact on the quality of the game, the standards, and kind of what they can actually put into their career. So that always drives me crazy as well, when you get people talking about the different standards or the different levels in the men's game, in the women's game compared to the men's. And I'm like, well, yeah, but the men earn enough that they can put their whole lives into their career. I mean, I watched an interview with a Manchester United defender, Lenny Yoro, with Rio Ferdinand. And Lenny Yoro's really young. I think he's like 19, 20. And he was saying he has an infrared room for recovery at home. And I just think women's team players, even though they're professional, they wouldn't be able to afford that. I mean, this is the caveat. I don't know how much players, like top players at top clubs like Leah Williamson, I don't know how much she earns. So that is the caveat there. But I would make a guess that it's not enough that she can afford to have an infrared room at home. And of course, that has an impact on the levels that they can reach, because they're having to they can't devote all of their time to football. They have to put time into something else. So I don't think you can call it fully professional. Other leagues, though, around Europe are kind of, I feel, a step behind even what the WSL is. For example, in the WSL, you have the rule that, isn't it like every Premier League club has to fund a women's team and has to put a certain amount in? I don't think that exists elsewhere. And in places like Italy and Spain, I think quite a lot of the teams are very poorly funded. And I think they're still kind of making their steps towards quote unquote professionalization. So, yeah, I think that is, again, something that we can feel happy about, we can feel proud about with the WSL, but we also have to admit that there is a long way to go. And yeah, we definitely still need even more. The Global Sports Podcast Network is changing the face of football podcasts with dedicated daily content for every Premier League team, women's football, fantasy football, and a daily Premier League wrap. Broadcast in 5 different languages. This is your one-stop shop for your daily football fix. Find GSPN wherever you find your usual podcasts. So the third topic of comparison for me is competitiveness. Now, I'm going to be controversial here, guys. Warning, we need to have a sound effect for Catherine being controversial. I don't think the WSL is the most competitive league in Europe. No. I mean, we say it is. I think we like to say that it is. But when you have one team winning the league for like 6 years in a row, no other team really getting that close. I mean, you can say about City last year, but I still don't think they came that close. Then how competitive is it really? Although I think sometimes the results don't actually match up to the performances. For example, Crystal Palace, I feel like have had some really good performances, but have kind of been, the scorelines won't reflect that. I do think you go into every game pretty much knowing who's going to win. Is it getting better? I like to think so. I think that particularly for the teams outside of the top kind of 3 or 4, they are getting closer together. I think those games are really difficult to call now, and they kind of seem to be on very much an equal footing. However, I still think that teams like Chelsea, Arsenal, Man City, I might put Man United in there, are still a cut above. And I think the gap is still pretty wide. So the league that I think is the most competitive, and again, this is just my opinion. You can disagree. I'm very happy for people to disagree with me. I think the most competitive is the Frauen Bundesliga in Germany. I mean, I follow Bayern Munich, so I watch a lot of the games, and like even the teams coming top, it has in the past been kind of dominated by either Bayern or Wolfsburg. However, nowadays, I mean, Frankfurt are currently top, and I think more than anything else, I watch these games thinking, oh God, this team is like 10th, but they're really giving Bayern or Frankfurt or Wolfsburg, they're really giving them a run for their money. And what was it? Wolfsburg were beaten not long ago by a team they shouldn't have been beaten by. Bayern have had a streak of conceding early to teams far below them. Yeah, I think the Frauen Bundesliga is very competitive, and I think it's becoming more so, much more so, with more kind of international players coming in. So, yeah, I think the least competitive leagues in Europe, again, my opinion, probably obviously Spain. I mean, Real Madrid are doing well, but are they going to usurp Barcelona? I don't think so. Barcelona, I think, just run riot every year, don't they? You pretty much know when teams are winning 6, 7, 8-0 every single week. I think that tells you something about the quality of the league. I think Scotland is much the same. So I follow Aberdeen, and they lost 10-0 last weekend. I think in Scotland it very much tends to be Glasgow City. Nowadays with I'm going to mispronounce her name, and I'm really sorry, Elena Sadiku. Yeah, at Celtic, sorry. I had Chelsea stuck in my head for some reason. I think because I was just talking about them. Yeah, they kind of run away with the leagues every year, and the teams far below them, like Aberdeen, can never really touch them. In the Netherlands, I feel like it's very much a top 6 versus a bottom 6. So you have kind of these 6 teams like, well, obviously FC Twente, who have won everything and they run away with the league a lot of years. Ajax, obviously Feyenoord, and I think FC Utrecht now are coming into this conversation as kind of the top. Yeah, you have like a top six, and the top six is competitive amongst themselves, and the bottom six are competitive amongst themselves, but they don't really. I think it's quite hard for someone in the bottom six to move into that top six. I don't think that tends to happen very easily, and I think unfortunately for my Storks, who I love, they tend to be called the best. The best of the rest, because they tend to be at the top of that bottom six. Yeah. In France, I think obviously Lyon has had a monopoly. PSG comes into it a little bit. So yeah, I don't think the WSL has much competition in terms of great leagues, but I do think the Frauen Bundesliga in Germany is above it. And that's my controversial take for the day. So the next difference I want to talk about is officiating. So I'm going to limit the number of times I can say so, by the way. I have picked up, I say it quite a lot. Yeah, the levels of officiating, or kind of, I'm not actually that sure whether the WSL officiating is the best or whether it's just kind of different standards. One thing that I've noticed in the Eredivisie in the Netherlands, it's a lot more physical, and the ref kind of lets a lot more go. Like, there's quite often a challenge where I think, oh God, in the WSL that would be a yellow, or that would be a free kick, or whatever. Yeah, the refs definitely let a lot more go. It's a very physical game. I feel like in Germany and France, it's more aligned to what the WSL is. I think maybe the Netherlands is an outlier there. But it's quite interesting now, because whenever I watch the Netherlands national team, I like to look at them and see whether they kind of have a similar physicality to them. And of course, a lot of the Dutch players in the national team actually don't play in the Netherlands, they play elsewhere. But refereeing definitely seems different. And again, I'm not sure if it's which one is better or kind of one is levels above. I think it's just different standards for what constitutes kind of a foul, which is, yeah, interesting, but I'm not going to say that one's better than the other. Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner, with 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs. We'll see about that. It's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. So if you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. The next topic, the next point that I've kind of highlighted as a difference between the WSL and other leagues, is the profile of players. So in the WSL, it's very multicultural. We have players from all over the world. I mean, just think about Manchester United starting 11. Actually, Manchester United is probably a bad, not the best analogy, because they actually have quite a few English players in the team. However, look at maybe a Man City. I think there was a game, when was it, that I noticed Man City, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, by the way. I am fully on board with this. They didn't have an English player in their starting 11. And I don't think you would see that in any other league in Europe in the women's game at the moment. I think that will come with more investment, because obviously you need then the money to bring these players in. However, yeah, that's definitely a big difference in the WSL. I'm not sure. I need to look up. I think it was. I'm not sure what game that was with City. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. It would have been with Yamashita in goal, not Kiara Keating. Yeah. But anyway, they didn't have an English player in their starting 11. And yeah, I think it's a really good thing personally, because I think diversity brings strength, and you want to bring the best players in so that your players learn from these best players. I mean, it's a similar thing that you talk about in teaching with kind of mixed attainment classes. that they learn from each other. Children learn from each other. Over in other leagues, I think the French league is becoming more multicultural. Players obviously like Mary Earps going to PSG. They have quite a few Dutch players as well. And I feel like it's the same in Germany. Bayern Munich, obviously George Stanway plays there. However, I do think it tends to be the outlier rather than the norm, to have kind of foreign players in your teams. The WSL is definitely the most multicultural. But again, I do see that changing with increased investment and so forth. In the Netherlands, I can't think of many foreign players. I mean, obviously there's Lily Johannes Ajax, who is American, but she only just chose to represent America because she was also eligible to represent the Netherlands. So I don't think I can really truly count her. I think they tend to go kind of Belgians. If there are foreign players in the Eredivisie, I feel like they're mainly going to be from Belgium. Obviously, they did used to have the conjoined league, the Beanie League. I still love that name, by the way. So yeah. Another really interesting thing in terms of player profile, the average age of starting 11s is really interesting to dig into. One thing that I really noticed is when I was doing my kind of roundup of different leagues around Europe, and I was looking at some of the Netherlands teams, and the players are so young. I mean, the captain of, I can't remember which team it was, but is 21. I mean, Maya Letitia at Manchester United is 22 and she's captain, and that's young. But like you quite often get 17, 18-year-olds and average ages of starting 11s in the Netherlands being like 21, 22, and that being influenced by having one player who's like 32. So that's really interesting. I feel like in the WSL, it's quite often quite a bit older, like 23, 24. And then comparing that to the men's game, I love doing these little comparisons on SofaScore of an evening. The average ages in the men's game, much higher again, 27, 28. So yeah, I think that's really interesting. In the Netherlands, I have a feeling it's because a lot of the kind of top players from the Netherlands end up moving abroad to go to clubs abroad. And they call it kind of, and this is their term for it, so it's not me calling it, they call it a training league. And sometimes some of the clubs in that bottom six call themselves training clubs as well. So I think there tends to be a progression where you kind of start off at one of the bottom six clubs, like the Storks or Heerenveen or something like that, and then go to a top six club like Ajax, Twente, and then get the move abroad. So it's kind of like a step ladder, is how it seems to work. I feel like the rest of the leagues are quite similar to the WSL, though. I think maybe, again, the Netherlands is a bit of an outlier there. But I need to look more into that. And the last, yes, you are going to not have to hear my voice soon. I know you're all so looking forward to my voice going away. And the last point of difference I wanted to talk about is media attention. So in the WSL, I feel like we actually have quite a lot of media attention on our teams compared, obviously not compared to the men's game, but compared to like other leagues around Europe. I think the attention is huge. You quite often see full press boxes, which I think is really great. And on social media, the games will actually trend in the UK on social media if you've got a big game, like the City versus United derby, where United won 4-2. Yes, thank you. I'm going to bring that up. I think that was trending on Twitter. So there's a lot more talk about it. I think as well, in England, we are, and I'm English, so I can say this, we are a nation of complainers. And so I think that lends itself very well to social media. People like being vocal and complaining about things they don't like. I feel like people do that with football a lot. And you've definitely got groups of fans online kind of, I'm going to single out Arsenal fans especially because they are there are big groups of them online, and they kind of drive a conversation forward. I don't always like the way they drive the conversation forward, but I do appreciate that they're bringing kind of more noise and more voices to the conversation. The success, obviously, of the Lionesses has brought with it huge media attention. And I feel like in a lot of the other leagues, you don't necessarily get the same level of coverage. Also, in terms of broadcast deals, Sky Sports and the BBC broadcast matches regularly. I really like DAZN. They cover a lot of the French league, the German league. I really wish that the Dutch league would go with DAZN because it'd be a lot easier to watch. But yeah, I really love it whenever you see WSL games on Sky Sports main event and things like that. And I think that is a huge thing to say to people, when you get this comment of no one watches women's football. It's like, yes, they do. It's on Sky Sports main event. It wouldn't be on main event if it wasn't a main event for them. Yeah. The other leagues, I think they are growing their media coverage since becoming professional. I really like how in Saudi Arabia, you can watch all of the Saudi League games on DAZN on a Friday afternoon. They tend to be. But that's definitely still a massive difference is the media. And again, I don't think I want to say whether I think something's good or bad. I think it's just different. Obviously, increased media attention would bring with it, hopefully, more of an audience, and that would breed into investment opportunities. But I do also think that increased kind of social media attention can also bring with it, there are huge dangers to that. Obviously, we've seen with the abuse that Bunny Shaw has been getting online, and that she had to take like a mental health break because of that. I think that is one of, unfortunately, the pitfalls of kind of having such a strong social media presence. All our love to Bunny Shaw, by the way. That's horrible, and we all stand with you. So I think that's actually all I have time for. I'll dig into more kind of differences and have a think about them and come back at a later date. But thank you for joining me, and I look forward to welcoming you to the next episode of Beyond the Pitch.